number one at 6:30. King 5 News starts now.
If the state Supreme Court says you're violating the Constitution and gives you a deadline to straighten up and act right, what happens if you don't? Well, that's something lawmakers and the governor could find out this year. King 5's Lori Matsukawa joins us live at the Digital Media Center with a story new for you at 6:30. Lori?
Gene, a year ago, justices ruled the state is violating the Constitution by not providing enough funding for basic education. To satisfy those justices, lawmakers need to come up with more than $1 billion this year and more than $4 billion by 2018. But what if they don't?
But constitutional rights are constitutional rights. They are guaranteed to every citizen.
Leaning up against the wall in Attorney Thomas Ahern's office is a photograph.
Well, that's George Wallace disobeying the court order that University of Alabama had to be desegregated.
It's been 50 years since Alabama's governor defied that desegregation order. Ahern says it reminds him of Washington's failure to fund schools.
Here we have a Supreme Court order in Washington that says the Constitution requires the state to fully fund our public schools. Our public officials are not obeying that Supreme Court order.
Ahern was the lead attorney in the McCleary decision, the ruling that gave the state a deadline to change how it funds schools.
And so far, what I see this year is more of the same.
Pat Sullivan is one of the lawmakers in the hot seat. He is the House Majority Leader and sits on the subcommittee that figures out how to fund schools.
There's a lot of argument around here about, well, what's the court going to do if we don't actually provide, additional funding for K-12 education?
Sullivan says lawmakers are in the dark.
Yeah, I hope we don't get to the point where we find what those consequences might be.
More excuses, more delay, but not obeying the Constitution.
Ahern says the court has the authority
to put pressure on the legislators to actually obey the Constitution and keep their word.
But the big thing is,
the court can impose all kinds of fines or penalties or sanctions.
And here's the punchline. The court can leave lawmakers essentially penniless by eliminating
any payment that you make for things that are non-paramount, like, well, let's say legislator salaries or utilities and heat in the legislative building or legislative offices.
Now, we're a long way from the courts cutting off heat to the Capitol building or freezing paychecks. But this past December, the court did tell lawmakers they hadn't made enough progress last year. We'll see how lawmakers do over the next 3 months of the session. Dennis.